Dun, dun.
Hi, this is Mike Sainato with Real Progressives. Tonight I have journalist Bill Moran with me to tell you a little bit about his lawsuit against Newsweek and how that transpired. Bill, if you could start up by introducing yourself.
Sure. So my name's Bill Moran. I'm a journalist, as Mike said, and I'm suing Newsweek for over $100 million, which is not your ordinary occurrence. But how that all sort of unfolded is I was working for a news outlet at the time, Sputnik. It's a bit of a controversial news outlet, albeit. And I wrote a story, and I made really just a very small mistake that Newsweek then proceeded to turn into the Lindbergh baby with like this huge Russian conspiracy. So here's how that all kind of unfolded. I saw WikiLeaks, the WikiLeaks dump had just gone out. So I was the weekend editor, and it was Columbus Day, so I was the only are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I wrote 12 to 14 stories like every day. And so I was in a rush, and I was going through social media, and I managed the social media too. So I see something when I'm looking at the hashtag for, I think it was the Podesta 2 leaks, that said Sidney Blumenthal said that Benghazi was Hillary's fault or something. That was like the top result when you looked at the hashtag. And so I'm like, well, this seems kind of crazy because why has nobody reported this? But let me look into it a little bit. And so I'm doing this like in a total rush. So I click on the link. It's WikiLeaks link. I Control F, go to the quote. That all matches up. So I'm thinking, oh, all right, this seems pretty good. And then I wrote the story. I wrote it in about 20 minutes. It's posted up, and then do a couple other things at work, smoke a cigarette, and I keep thinking, why hasn't anybody else reported on it? So I took the quote, ran it through Google search, found out that it was something that Kurt Eichenwald had actually said. So the quote was misattributed. So I pulled it down right away. There I am thinking, oh, well, I caught that quickly. That could have been a problem. Whew. And then like 3 or 4 hours later, Kurt Eichenwald writes, "Dear Donald Trump, I am not Sidney Blumenthal," which then becomes, "Dear Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, I'm not Sidney Blumenthal." Because Trump ended up quoting it at a Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania rally, or quoted that same thing. He probably found it from Twitter as opposed to my story, because my story only got like 1,000 views. It was very small. Well, the way Kurt Eichenwald framed this whole thing was that this was some huge Russian conspiracy, that the Russians were passing information to Donald Trump, and that he has proven it now. And like some of his tweets in regards to this were completely nuts. He said that this proves WikiLeaks is in league with the Russians, which turned out Stanford University just did a study that found out that, or that judged that that was the single most believed piece of fake news this election cycle. So that goes to tell you, it actually spread around like wildfire. And so he's on NPR, he's on MSNBC, CNN, everywhere saying this stuff. And so then I ended up getting fired a couple days later, and it was because the hysteria. I was told that point blank that, you know, it was just way too much drama around this. And so like the day after this had happened, I reached out to Eichenwald on Twitter. I told him, you know, here's what actually happened. And Eichenwald blocked me. He didn't even respond. He just blocked me. It didn't fit his narrative. He said that he was in a block storm because the trolls were attacking him. I don't know. So then a day later,
how did people respond to you? Did people like, I'm sure you were getting a lot of internet trolls. Like what kind of messages were people sending you in response to Eichenwald's false story?
Well, see, so initially Eichenwald's false story didn't have my name in it. But it was just so crazy and it was wrong and it was causing a lot of hysteria. So I was kind of adamant, like, dude, you need to change your story because it's wrong. And like, here's the evidence that proves that it's wrong. And so we had a back and forth. I had a phone call with him where he basically threatened to ruin my life if I go public. He also did this in emails, or to help me get a job at the New Republic. And so I'm like, okay, this is a little too crazy. So I wrote a story basically saying, here's what really happened. Here's how that all went down. And then a couple days transpire. Eichenwald sends me like 75 to 85 tweets calling me a fraud and a Russian agent, and I'm on to you and everything else. Then adds my name into the first story and then writes another story basically saying that I was taking high-level orders from Russian operatives and his intelligence sources tell him that he's cracked some crazy code, or I don't know, just like really out to lunch. This is like right when Eichenwald started to have like what everybody in the media kind of thinks is a breakdown. Like the Tucker Carlson interview happened not that long afterwards where he was saying, I have a message from the CIA, and Tucker keeps asking him, yo, what's the message from the CIA? What's the secret message? And so this was just really kind of shocking. So at that point, after I had been like accused of being a Russian agent and everything, it got very difficult to try to find any work. I had law school friends who kind of just, you know, put me aside, and like I had tons of trolls saying like, you're a traitor and you should be in prison and everything. And I'm just like, whoa, I just miswrote something for 19 minutes and I pulled it down. Like, what the hell is going on here? And so I actually want to read you something that, so Eichenwald told a reporter who was questioning his story, because a bunch of like Washington Post, Bellingcat, and a few others questioned his story. They said, you know, there's no way that Trump actually got this information from the Sputnik article, because there were viral tweets that had like 20,000 follows, or I mean retweets and everything. So he told this one reporter, last week at the behest of the Central Intelligence Agency, a group of 16 national security experts, both inside and outside the government, put out a warning to members of the press that we are in a very dangerous situation, and described specifically how Russian disinformation campaigns work, where truthful information is leaked for a while by altered information with the intent of blowback into the location of focus. And then later on, I don't want to read this whole thing and just distract. Later on, he said, sorry.
That's all right. But I mean, just to add to
later on, this is kind of important. He actually said that he just randomly found this article because someone had directed him towards Sputnik, basically in that advisory that was sent out by that work group. So he just found the article. He didn't have any source for this. And I actually didn't know this, but his whole article, he had no goddamn source for it, which is like extremely important. So he just saw this article on Sputnik and he realized it was his words, and he cooked up this whole goddamn theory. And it's just like, whoa, like, why didn't you just pull it or change it because you have no source behind it? Instead, yeah, he went after me in a retaliatory fashion, and it was like really clear that he was doing. Like, he even said, "Go ahead and sue me. First discovery requests are going to Sputnik." So he thought that he would intimidate me. In the midst of all this, my father had died, like basically like a week after this, and so I mean, I was like extremely depressed. Like, there were some days where like I felt like I could actually like jump over the railing and just straight up kill myself, which sounds crazy. But when you've been called a Russian agent who is like basically the most infamous person who sabotaged the election, when it's like a story that got like 1,000 views. And, you know, just on the broader, this whole the Russians are impacting the election nonsense. It is nonsense because, what is it? Sputnik and RT get like 0.1% of the views of all the newspapers and all the television stations that all endorsed Hillary Clinton. The fact that that changed the outcome, particularly the idea that that changed the outcome in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, that's absurd. It's like beyond absurd. They ran a big campaign.
And you're from Idaho, is that correct?
So no, I had actually worked on a ballot initiative in Idaho to lower tuition by raising the cigarette tax. I'm actually from Arizona.
Okay. So you're not Russian at all.
I'm not Russian at all. In fact, my father was a disabled U.S. Navy veteran. He had a bullet lodged in his back. My whole family, like my grandfather on my father's side was a champion of the Pacific Fleet in boxing. My great-grandfather was in the cavalry. And that's my father's name too, because I was named after him. I was actually born on the same day as him. And the fact that they'd say this, and there's not even any sourcing behind it, and it was done just to be malicious. I mean, it's incredible. So yeah, I'm suing them, and I'm suing them for over $100 million. And honestly, I think I have a pretty good case. The way that it's broken down and the way the genesis of this story happened, where there were no sources, and then all of a sudden there's one source or two sources after he makes edits that like add things into it's just like crazy.
And these were stealth edits too. There aren't any notes that this article was amended or edited. I think, did Eichenwald just make changes to these articles whenever he felt like it?
He changed the article about 20 or 30 times. He did put a note at the end that said, including a statement from the Sputnik writer, but it's like explicitly the opposite of what I told him. Like I told him, dude, this isn't a conspiracy. This isn't any of the things that you're saying. I made a mistake. I deleted it, and you have some crazy conspiracy theory. And I also want to note, I don't want to get caught up defending Russia or Trump, because I don't know if there is something with Russia or Trump. That's like way beyond my level of competence. I can say that I'm definitely more suspicious of those stories after what happened to me, but I also try to be careful not to project the fact that Eichenwald just made up a story on every other journalist who may have good sourcing and good ideas.
I know Newsweek hasn't really acknowledged any wrongdoing, but have some of the other outlets and some of the other journalists who have echoed and parroted Eichenwald's claims, have they, have you seen them retract anything? Have you gotten any apologies at all for, what you've gone through because of this fake news story?
Nobody's apologized. The Ross story, once I told them everything that happened, they had actually reprinted Eichenwald's second article that was just dedicated to saying every nasty false thing about me ever. And they pulled their story, which good on them for doing. But Keith Olbermann is still referencing this story and getting tens of thousands of retweets when he does it too, and getting the masses into rah, rah, rah. Trump is a Russian plan. And it's all right, come on, let's go through what evidence we actually have that things are wrong. With this Flynn thing, right? There could be something there. I damn well want to know what's in the transcripts, though. If he had that conversation with Kislyak, what are in the transcripts? And then, if we look at that whole situation, too, today, some of the news is that he was talking with the Russian government during the campaign. Well, Michael McFaul, who was the U.S. ambassador to Russia under the Obama administration, has said openly that he had communications with the Russian government during the campaign, and for the purpose of just transitioning. It's not, I'm definitely not saying that Michael McFaul was collaborating with the Russians. That would be nuts. But just to, you have to figure out what governments you're going to work with, whether we're in a good situation with Russia or an adversarial one, they're still a big country. So there's definitely still got to be communications there. So just the idea, and you'll see like news articles like this that just say things like that. Oh, there were communications with the Russians. Okay, what was said? Like, is this something I should be scared about or not? Maybe I should be, but I want to know what they said.
I mean, that's true. I think, any Sanders supporters, any progressive who's, skeptic, mostly because this hysteria has been, focused on Russia, and we've kind of pushed to the side any, acknowledgement of the DNC primary, the Democratic primaries being rigged or anything with that. Glenn Greenwald's pointed out that many of these stories, yours included, had either been debunked, retracted, or amended, always in the same direction, that they kind of sensationalized or grossly speculated, based on this, Russian fear-mongering. So, and your story was debunked outright by Washington Post. Snopes debunked it. I wrote about it. Paste magazine is
Bellingcat debunked it. And Bellingcat is like the group that like calls Russia out on bullshit with like MH17 and Syria and various other things. Like that is, they debunked it, which is just like crazy. I mean, that's.
And Newsweek's editor-in-chief, like you told me before in December, claimed the intelligence agencies use that article to help them when it's a false story.
Oh yeah, I was like scared the entire Christmas holiday that like someone was going to barge in my house and like arrest me. I was having nightmares about this because Jim and Poco wrote yet on Twitter, this is the story that helped the FBI identify the Russian saboteurs or something. And I'm just like, but nobody from the FBI has called me. And it's just like, what? And like only my name was in those articles too. I'm like, this isn't okay. I'm kind of scared now. Like, what's going on?
I mean, do you have any idea why Newsweek has kind of ignored your quest to retract this article and have failed to apologize? And have you followed up with Newsweek now that Poco has had ousted a couple of days ago?
So my theory on it all is Kurt Eichenwald really hasn't had a big story in a long time. But tonight he's actually going to be on Lawrence O'Donnell talking about Russia. Why is he going to be talking about Russia, and why is he welcome on Lawrence O'Donnell? Because of those same stories that he smeared me with. It was his biggest story in a long time. Like I said, parts of it were deemed by Stanford University to be the biggest campaign hoax, the most believed campaign hoax. And this thing got like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of clicks. So here they were sitting on this big story that was, of course, completely false. And so you saw it with Eichenwald when he threatened me, and he also offered to try to just help me out and help me get a job at the New Republic. Basically, I don't think the truth mattered to them. I think they were thinking, we're getting clicks, we're making money off of this. And so even if we're lying to the public, who cares? This kid needs to shut up and get the hell out of the way. And so, like, at the time I was 29 years old, I'm 30 now, they were thinking that I was some young kid who couldn't do anything about it. There's definitely class and age dynamics where, Jim and Poco has been in the news business for 30 years. Eichenwald, more or less the same. They're very powerful people. And so they figured, okay, we could destroy this kid, and what difference does it make? And in fact, Eichenwald more or less said things like that when he was interviewed by Paste. He's like, well, you guys are or I guess I have to destroy this kid or something. And it's just like, no, you should just tell the truth. You should say, okay, well, this story seemed interesting, but here's what actually happened, and try to revive it in some other way, find some new angle. But lazy journalism and money. And they never thought that I would fight back. And throughout this, like there have been times that I felt like I don't have a country anymore because I'm labeled as a traitor. I mean, if I go to apply for a job, what's the first thing they're going to see? They're going to see Eichenwald's article saying that I altered documents at the behest of the highest levels of the Russian government and WikiLeaks to defraud the election, right? Like, I'm sorry, but if I'm hiring someone and I see that, that's a red flag for me. So, but the one thing that they didn't take from me is the fact that, you know, my father raised me to fight back, and this is bullshit. And so I filed that lawsuit. And
you have a law degree from Georgetown, is that correct?
Yes, I went to Georgetown Law. And so filed that lawsuit, and I think it's a very well-written lawsuit. I hope it is. It's 22 pages, and Newsweek got served with it last Thursday or Friday, and Jim and Poco just magically left on Monday, or Tuesday. So kind of Newsweek says that it has nothing to do with the lawsuit, but it makes no other sense. Like, what else could have led to Jim and Poco leaving? Newsweek's actually had better revenues under Jim and Poco than they've ever had. Like, they were doing well financially. So if it's not the lawsuit, what is it? And so at this point, yeah, I'm just fighting back. And I definitely feel like I have a good chance with this lawsuit, and I hope I do, because I never do this to anybody again. The media is not supposed to be blackballing people with false stories or ruining lives. Like, this isn't a police state. That's not supposed to happen.
And when do you expect to hear anything back from the lawsuit, and when do you expect to get a response and actually get into court?
Sure. So they have about another 20 days to respond to the lawsuit, which was filed in the New York Supreme Court. And I just saw a comment asking, were they fired? Eichenwald is still working at Newsweek, but Jim and Poco was fired. Jim and Poco is the editor, and I'm very happy that they were fired, and that he was fired, to be honest. But so they have 20 days to respond. What they're going to try to do is a motion for summary judgment, which is what you always do if you're the lawyer. Try to find some way to get the lawsuit kicked out. I don't see any way that it can be. The jurisdiction is normal. There's definitely merits to the case between all the communications. And so at that point, I think they have to settle unless they're suicidal. If they play this to the hilt, I'll play it to the hilt too. And they will cease to exist. And I'm totally okay with that.
All right. Well, Bill, is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know?
I would say just be skeptical of the media. Not so skeptical that you call everything fake news, because there are a lot of good journalists out there. But always read things, look for alternative sources, and see if you can't find something else that backs things up. And just keep an open mind about the world around you. A lot of times the news does a great job. Sometimes, like with Eichenwald, they don't. And so just always be skeptical.
All right. Well, Bill, I'm going to let you go, and to our Real Progressive viewers, until, I'll be away next week, but I'll be back in 2 weeks, with another interview. And this is Michael Sainato. Thank you, Bill, for, coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. And, hope to have you on again in the future. And, I wish you the best of luck with that lawsuit.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Thank you.